devices are converging, platforms converging, and certainly for us internally, roles are beginning to fold into each other, which again, for the smaller companies is probably a good thing, and where the big companies I think will struggle. For bigger companies to change, they need to sort of get rid of a whole bunch of people and then hire a whole bunch of new people the next day. For us, we'll go, oh, Henry will do it, or so do it, or I'll just spend more of my time doing that than that. But certainly change is easier for us. There's no doubt about that. But roles are certainly changing. Certainly in the sales, marketing, and publicity angles, those roles are definitely changing. We've done an app on the wasteland, and that involved a whole bunch of people doing new stuff. Key in this is the editorial process. Editors like to commission and sometimes do nothing else, and that, I'm afraid, will be unacceptable in months and years to come. And of course, the role of the author. One thing that we haven't quite got sorted out is where product ends and marketing starts. If you make something, do you sell it? Do you give it away? What's it worth? What's it worth to whom? So we've ended up both on the ebook side and on the digital side getting not ourselves into a tangle on this, but I don't think we've come up with any really good answers. Maybe just because it's on a case-by-case basis, maybe because we don't know, maybe because we're getting it wrong, or maybe just because it's so embryonic. It doesn't matter, and the money around this kind of stuff is still quite low. But if you are, if you take a short story collection and break it down, what's that worth? The marketing person will say, well, let's just get it out for free, and blah, blah, blah. The salesperson go, actually, we can sell this. Let's make some money. So, is that a marketing ploy, or is it something to sell? And those boundaries are certainly disappearing, but at the same time you have to have a really clear idea about what your content is and what you want to use it for and how to use it. So the ability to know what your copyrights are and how they can be used is certainly a journey that we are going through right now, and I think we're getting quite good at it actually. Publishers only own, well in fact we don't even own the copyrights on the whole, we license copyrights from the copyright holders. Okay, we might own a few desks and a few other things, but essentially all we have is a whole section of licensed copyrights. Yes, that used to be, you print them in a book and send them off to the warehouse, and hopefully the warehouse will send a few around the world. That of course is not the way things are developing. So look at your copyrights and see whether see what you can do with them. And yes, you might be able to sell them, and they may be a big part of the marketing campaign as well. So convergence is something that is coming at us fast, both internally and externally. And the product versus marketing debate will rumble on, but free, of course, being in the background. And certainly when you want to be generous with your customers, engage them, be relevant to them, giving them stuff for free or being generous with them, of course, is extremely important. So that the free thing is not going away, or the generous thing is not going away. The more generous you are, the more your customers will love you, but at the same time you may have nothing left to sell. So we're very wary of that, but at the same time we're sort of learning as we go. Which brings us nicely onto the digital side. I guess for us, in October, percentage of our ebook sales represented 1.5% of our turnover. In November it was 2.5%, in December it was 3.5%, in January it was 7%, in February it was 9%, in March just finished it was 10%. So we're on the curve, it's happening for us. And what we wanted to make sure was that we made ebooks as normal as possible in the process. There are difficulties, say, in the size of company we are. We have to do things that bigger companies feel they have to, and don't always get the benefits from it. And when we were looking around for partners to talk to about our digitalisation, we couldn't. Everyone was over-promising and under-delivering. It seems very. Everyone in this area seems to feel they have a right to do this. I don't quite know why. Anyway, there was, so in the end we decided to do it ourselves, and I think that, again, what we found, so we bought our own dam, we bought our own dad, and we used the expertise that we had in-house. And for a company like ours, once we've set up some infrastructure, we then like to offset those costs by sharing them. Hence, we do that with our sales force, and the Independent Alliance happened that way. And with Factory, not having a conversion house or a distribution company that we were pleased with, we decided to do it ourselves. And with Factory, we've invited others to come and share. The reason that I think it's been a success is that most of the people operating this stuff they're West Coast, and they're hardware software companies, and they're off-site, if you like. Faber Factory is something that comes from publishing. We approach everything from the sensibilities of being a publisher. More to the point, there's also a group of people who you can go to. I'd say, actually, what about this or what about that? I don't know about pricing or how to deal with a contract here, or how do I do marketing for my ebooks. So it's become a large, significant part of what we do, and it's working very well. What I would say is that I think that for all of us, it's not happening yet, but the ability to learn is becoming more important than what you know. Not yet, that's why I say my job isn't done by a 12-year-old, but it's our ability to be quick is extremely important, and we are very good at it, all of us in this room. So the digital world would be a great place for us. Things are happening very quickly, but the corporates and the larger companies do struggle. They struggle for change, and they struggle to learn quickly. So intelligent, discursive speed, I think, is one thing that is massively in our favour. So when we've been going out and talking about Factory, we say, yes, we know as much as everyone else, but my God, we're very, very good at learning too. So when the new things come, we'll be there at the forefront. We are working extremely hard on, wait for it, HXTML. We don't quite know where tagging and search will lead us, but we know it's extremely important. Being able to dissect your book, right down to, say, paragraphs, and so that people can search your stuff, is obviously really important already. I can't imagine it's getting more. If you imagine life without a high street selling your books, it's fairly obvious that people will have to go online to find out where to buy their books. So we have developed a system already, we're testing it now, be available for Factory customers fairly soon, to say be able to slice and dice and also amalgamate too, to make your digital file as absolutely super flexible as possible. A lot of the things at the moment, you invent something and it stays over there. With HTML, you have a very, very fluid file. It can give you a print book, it can give you an ebook, it can give you a print-on-demand book. But also, if some whizzy thing is developed in 4 years' time, where you actually say, well, actually we need this over there, it'll be happily springboard to it. So whatever you're doing and however you're doing it, everything has to be really very, very searchable. The old 2.0 web stuff was all about making your insides out and making the guts on the inside, very Pompidou Centre. And that, of course, is about being generous and people can, so they can share and engage. And I guess that's still true. And the ability for people to search your words as intensely as possible can only get more important. So we are working hard on this day in, day out. And the 4 Ps, if you like, in this new space, I think are still shaking down. What we do know is that price and volume, which of course have a relationship, of course, in anything that happens. With ebooks and indeed with digital products, that relationship becomes extreme. So a 99p book can sell whatever, 150,000 all of a sudden for new writers. My friends at Atlantic are playing around with this a lot. They have a lot of genre books and genre writers who are still really beginning their career, so they're desperate to get lots and lots of readers for those unestablished crime science fiction writers. And there's a lot of playing around going on. Free again is possible, and that tends to work. So price and Amazon, if you like to view on price, are dragging and pushing price down all the time. It's obviously a major issue, but in the more discreet marketing world, it's probably the biggest lever of those 4 Ps. The position is important too. We've done five apps. One of them has been very successful. The reason being that it was American friendly. 70% of all apps are bought by Americans. So if you've got the thick of it, or QI, or Harry Hill, that's all very lovely, but UK people don't buy a lot of apps, still to this day. So Steve Jobs really liked our app, and so it went front of house. It was App of the Week. It was featured in the presentation on iPad 2 actually. So the FF logo is there somewhere. You don't blink, but it meant that our app was actually front of house in position on all Apple stores. So it did extremely well. So placement is also important in position as well, of course. And millions and millions of apps just languish in the App Store, and no one ever finds them. Searching in the App Store is not that straightforward. I touched on the role of the editor, but of course the thing that I haven't mentioned is the author. We are not struggling, it's the wrong word, but there's probably a history at Faber which is about allowing the author to be a sort of voluntary bystander, if you like, in their publishing. We'll protect them from the horrid things that happen in life, and if they don't want to be involved, then we tend to be quite nice about that. Other publishers are probably a bit firmer, to be honest. But of course, having the author, if not actually with you, sitting next to you as you go forward to publication, but actually leading it is something, of course, that I think is all going to happen. And certainly, knowing how and when your author gets involved is extremely important. Of course, the digital arena also means that the role of the publisher is difficult. Stephen Leather is a sort of famous case, and indeed Agatha Christie estate are now saying actually that they don't need a publisher. Ian Fleming's estate as well are doing their own publishing in terms of the backlist for ebooks. So we are we're concentrating really hard on where the author sits in our building and what is the added value of being published. I was talking to someone in the music industry about sales of Radiohead, and saying that sales of Radiohead had basically disappeared. But it may be that since they haven't had a record company for the last 2 albums, which I thought was interesting. But it may be that actually they weren't making much money out of their album sales anyway, and it was all about on tour. But I think that number is getting some people in the record industry quite a lot of hope. At the same time, if you can publish yourself, if you're well known, what the hell is a publisher for? So we are working really hard, on making sure that our authors feel valued, and that doesn't mean just having a nice cup of tea or indeed a nice launch party, but actually really making sure that their publishing is better with us than without us, and that's kind of quite absolutely central to what's going on at Faber at the moment. And certainly the sales and marketing reach and all that kind of stuff is fine, but if you are a big name, you may feel that you can do it yourself. So the role of the author in terms of where we are, not sitting behind in some discreet and lovely corner, but actually really alongside, is important. Certainly in the digital space, Harry Hill doesn't tweet, so his app didn't do very well. Thick of it, people were tweeting all the time around it, and we sold about 5 times as many. So the role of the author and where they intersect, and helping them as well, is a seriously big deal. So onto the old author brand versus publishing brand thing. Given the whole, people want certainty, people want recommendation, people want engagement, people want relevance. Even if you're a small company, I think that publishing brands are important. My friend Andrew Franklin, who runs Profile, severely disagrees with me, which is ironic given he actually has two brands, I would suggest, i.e. The Economist, which I think you've probably heard of, and Serpent's Tail, which also has a huge resonance for a certain type of reader. Anyway, Faber, we believe, does have a publishing brand, and I think the brand does operate now as well. We're finding it operates as a sort of compass in a very disrupted sector. It sort of points people towards that relevance and possible engagement. When I talk about our brand, I talk about it as a sort of residue of our publishing. Again, people then, gardening in the shade is a sort of historical footnote, but it is about what's left. We're independent, which makes life extremely, which is very important. Our shareholding structure is extremely important to who we are and what we've been. Our commitment to quality is also extremely important. Taste, which is a rather old-fashioned thing to say, but the exercising of taste is extremely important to any publishing company. I would suggest we don't want to publish everything, so therefore the exercising of taste means that we say we like that, we don't want that. We might think that's very good, but it's not for us. So the application of taste over the last 81 years has made Faber probably what it is. There's an argument you said that actually publishing is just about taste and technology. Please discuss. And again, something, and this is a sort of slightly more furry one, if you like, but certainly something to do with the author and nurturing them too. And I think we'd like to be able to put innovation and creation in there, creativity in there as well, but we don't always feel confident enough to do so. When Faber's ahead of the curve, we feel pretty good because of our past, the best of the past with the best of the future feels pretty good to us. We know when we're doing it, and we often know when we're not. Why is independence important? Well, I think if you're in charge of the pension fund of the National Health Service, and you say, actually, I can invest in Shell or BP or Pepsi-Cola or Random House or HarperCollins, I need the same rate of return on my investment, otherwise I'm not doing my pension any good. So, by definition, if you're an editor at Random House, you have to be responsible to those shareholders. So you're bound to be more empirical, more cautious, and be very, very keen on genre, which is a much more straightforward piece of business. You can't go back to your pension person running pensions going, I bought this new thing, it's going to be marvellous, but you won't have heard of it. An easier conversation is actually, we're building a crime business, we bought the next 10 and we'll be spending a whole shed load of marketing so that we know we'll sell a whole bunch of similar books in 6 years' time. So that is why the corporates are much happier in genre and brand publishing than we are. They're extremely good at manufacture of that, and they're better than us, quite frankly. But at the same time, we therefore can be much more creative. We don't have to look at Bookscan every time we go to the toilet, and we can do what we like because we don't need to have return on investment profit every year, though we all need to make money to survive. It does mean, I think, that we can have a medium-term view, and that allows for quality. It also means that we don't have to discard our authors after the first or second time, so again we can have a commitment to our authors. We're allowed to exercise our taste, which gives our businesses a personality, again, which corporates can't. So all those things, Faber shares with everyone in this room. We have huge opportunities, I think. For us, some areas of keeping up that brand are not necessarily extremely profitable, or they're not a wildly valuable use of cash. So keeping Ezra Pound in print there are easier ways of spending money, quite frankly. But at the same time, Ezra Pound is extremely important to modernism and T.S. Eliot, and again, to the thrust of our business. So what we've done and how we've sort of squared this circle, if you like, or completed the circle, is to have brand-based businesses which spring off. Our publishing, because of who we are and what we like to publish and what our shareholders want us to do, will never be super profitable. We have good years and we have slightly less good years, and we have a reasonably wide publishing portfolio, but what we do have is a brand which people on the whole know what it's for, and people tend to like, back to the partnership conversation. So things like the Independent Alliance, which is essentially a brand-based business about us being independent, it's called the Independent Alliance after all, and has been a conspicuous success, is a brand-based business. We also wanted to say, we were friends of writers and we believed in writing, so therefore we started the Faber Academy, which is doing extremely well. It has very, very good cash. But publishing's cash model, Jesus, you couldn't invent it, really, could you? So to have a different kind of model, which is about writers and about writing, seemed to make a huge amount of sense for us. And again, as I say, it's been successful. It's also international, so therefore the word spreads. We have courses in Australia, we have courses in Ireland, we have courses in Canada, we have courses in Paris. So Faber Academy is in fact not exactly worldwide, but it certainly has a good position in some of the English language speaking places in the world, and of course Europe as well. And Faber Factory, which is essentially about us being good at the new, and also again being a place to go for other independent publishers, where we like to partner, and we'll spring other services out of Factory as well, and there'll be other brand-based businesses along the way when we see fit. So publishing over here, doing what it does, the brand-based businesses as well, becoming a larger part, I guess, of what we do, but at the same time absolutely entrenched, if you like, in who we are. We're not, they're not different businesses, either physically or on the balance sheet. They come from who we are, and indeed the people who work in the business. Brand is more, just arguable that actually more bollocks is talked about brand than marketing, but it's a pretty high competition, quite frankly. But we do believe in our brand. We do believe in the values that they have, and I think the value of it in some ways is, you can argue about what a publishing brand means, but I think internally for us it's extremely useful, because you don't have to. People who work at Faber tend to know who we are, and so there's a massive shorthand in everything that we do, and again you'll have that benefit too. And certainly when I see that kind of thing, that benefit arriving in a way which has a competitive advantage, I feel that's something good. So, for example, the person who sells our books in Northern Europe will happily sit at our acquisition meeting and our launch meeting in a way that I know that her competitor at Penguin is nowhere near those kind of meetings. So the understanding of our publishing, the ownership that they have, her fifth day out in Brussels or somewhere, she's still extremely dedicated and extremely close to the business, in a way that others are. So the shorthand, the shortness of communication that involves all of our businesses have, and the meaning that everyone in those businesses ascribes to what we do is extremely valuable. It's difficult